7 innocent Jewish women have recently been released from horrific captivity in the dungeons of Gaza. For over 470 days, they suffered brutal torture as they were denied food, water, air, and forced to serve as slaves to their Hamas captors. Yet, despite the travesty, not a single women's rights organization has stood up to condemn the atrocities against these women and other Jewish women still suffering inside of the Gaza Hamas dungeons. The double standard is deafening. Take a look at what the new appointee to the United Nations, Elise Stefanik, United Nations, the American ambassador to the United Nations, has to say about this incredible double standard.
Because if you look at the anti-Semitic rot within the United Nations, there are more resolutions targeting Israel than any other country, any other crisis combined. And we have significant national security councils, the anti-Semitism, whether it's UN Women failing to condemn Hamas's terrorist attack and terrorist regime against innocent civilian women, using rape and targeting women specifically, taking them hostage. I am overjoyed that those 3 young women hostages were returned home. We need to stay committed to ensuring every hostage is brought home. I've met with many hostage families. This position, we need to be a voice of moral clarity on the UN Security Council and at the United Nations at large, for the world to hear the importance of standing with Israel. And I intend to do that. This year will mark the 50th year since the disgraceful Zionism is Racism resolution at the United Nations. And at the time, our U.S. Ambassador, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, spoke out strongly against that disgraceful resolution. That is the type of leadership that I hope to bring, if confirmed, to the United Nations. And President Trump has a tremendous record when it comes to standing with Israel, whether it's the Abraham Accords, whether it's his commitment to combating anti-Semitism, or recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel. This is a strong, strong record, and I hope to do that at the UN if confirmed.
Amazing stuff. But I'd like to share with you a stunning secret from Jewish mysticism about the reason for this double standard. It was in the year 1962 on the festival of Purim that the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, addressed this double standard in the most incredibly empowering way. Instead of looking at Jews as victims of the anti-Semitic double standard, rather empowering Jews to realize that we actually have the spiritual power to turn around this disgusting and obnoxious disease. You see, the Rebbe quoted the Talmud in Kiddushin 33b, which makes a stunning statement there in the commentary of Tosfos, that the reason for anti-Semitism is because of the sin of false weights. False weights, which means in the olden days, people used to have a scale, and they used to measure, a sort of measurement of flour or rice or something against a certain measurement, and that's how they would sell it. But if you had a false measurement, then you were selling less than a pound of product, or less than whatever the amount was supposed to be, for that same price of a pound, and that's a sin in the Torah. So when a person has false weights, imbalanced scales, that is the reason that causes anti-Semitism. And the Rebbe explained it in the most beautiful way. The Rebbe explained that anti-Semitism is, by definition, double standard. It's when the Gentiles treat the Jews in a way that's different to the way they treat other people. If you want to treat everybody equally and condemn everybody equally, that's fine. That's not anti-Semitism. But if you're going to single out the Jews only and not condemn anybody else, now that's a double standard. The Rebbe explained that the reason for anti-Semitism being a double standard is because we, in our own homes, may harbor imbalanced scales, improper scales. What does that mean? The Rebbe explained it to mean that we live in a way where our commitment to our Jewish values is not balanced properly with our commitment to our secular values, where our commitment to our soul is imbalanced from our commitment to our bodies. For example, when it comes to the way we live our lives will spare no expense to make sure we drive the nicest car, we live in the nicest home, and wear the nicest clothing. But if heaven forbid we come across kosher meat and we see that it's a little bit more expensive than regular meat, or if a private school Jewish education is going to cost us more than it would have cost us elsewhere, we say, oh no, this we can't afford. Now that's a double standard. We wouldn't be caught dead with an old iPhone, but when it comes to a pair of tefillin, you'll say, you know what? Zayd's grandfather's tefillin from 100 years ago is good enough. We can't find the funds to spend the extra money on a brand new pair of tefillin. Any person who respects himself today will say that he's familiar with Shakespeare and he's well read in the Wall Street Journal, and he certainly knows all the characters and important lines of the movies from the past 30 years. But you ask a fellow like that if he knows a quote from Rabbi Akiva, from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Rambam, or from Rashi, from the great sages of Jewish history? Not even close. Once again, an imbalanced scale. We'll go to great lengths to purchase for ourselves expensive and painful gym memberships. But when it comes to the needs of our soul, we don't even know where to start. We'll take every cruise and every vacation. But how many trips have you made to the Holy Land? We'll make sure to send our kids to Ivy League schools, sparing no expense on the most pricey and expensive education for our children. But when it comes to their Torah education, well, that can just as easily end in their early teenage years. When we have an imbalanced scale within our own lives, the Rebbe interprets the Talmud to mean that manifests in a double standard with which we Jews are judged by the Gentiles of the world. This does not mean that we're blaming the victim. What it does mean is that the Talmud is empowering the Jewish people instead of complaining, oh, woe is me, and why are we being treated to this double standard? Let's man up and realize that if I can reach a state of equanimity and equilibrium within my own spirituality, between my body and soul, my physical and my spiritual, my commitment to my self and my commitment to my God, it's then that the nations of the land will reflect the same balance to us as well. We're not a victim. We are the victor of our own destiny.